The 10th edition of Warhammer 40,000 is almost here, and with it comes Hive-Fleet Leviathan, an invasion of Tyranids on an apocalyptic scale. With the arrival of Leviathan, we're seeing new Tyranid models for the first time in many years, including some reimaginations of some of the most classic models in the Tyranid range. I'm talking, of course, about the original Carnifex, the Screamer Killer. Originally released way back in 2nd edition, the model has been reimagined in the new Leviathan box set, but today, we're going one step further. I've teamed up with the wildly talented Tyranid artist Nick, also known as the Modern Synthesist, who will be joining me on the channel as a Tyranid expert to help me make the most of the new Tyranid hype wave with the launch of 10th edition. Today, we're reimagining the Screamer Killer again, using the new model and the original design together to make something bigger, badder, and more brutal than ever. This is the Screamer Killer like you've never seen before. This collaboration couldn't have come at a better time. Nick is one of the foremost experts in Tyranids in the world, and is widely renowned for his incredible sculpting and conversion work.
There's a guy called Modern Synthesist on Instagram who does some amazing Tyranid kit bashes, and I'd love to do more stuff like that.
Using epoxy putties and existing model kits, Nick has an uncanny ability to cut apart familiar Tyranid bits and reassemble them in bigger, scarier, and more interesting ways. It's like nothing I've ever seen. So when Games Workshop sent me an early copy of the Leviathan box, I knew I had to bring in Nick to help me do some cool stuff with it. So Nick invited me over to his studio. Let's take a look.
Hey, what's up? Come on in.
First of all, Nick has a huge collection of Tyranid art. From old codexes to rare art books to some incredible commissioned sketches, Nick has a beautiful library of references that he draws inspiration from for all of his projects. Some of the incredible work-in-progress pieces that are scattered around his workshop are directly inspired by the art he's surrounded by. It's easy to see how creativity can flow in this space. He also showed me his incredible display board for his Genestealer cult army that he made a few years back. It's tucked conveniently into a cool carrying case. As you can see, Nick has a very distinctive style. It's bright, it's vibrant, it's fun, and it's just dripping with creative energy. The patriarch for the cult is this guy here. Nick explained to me that there's a single line of fluff in an old Genestealer cult codex that mentions that Tyranid warriors get their weapons from something called the Osseous Throne, so Nick decided to make one from scratch. Personally, I love when fluff and creativity and kit bashing comes together to make something really awesome. So Nick has made a lot of cool custom Tyranids over the years, and a lot of them were commissions for other people, but a good chunk of them he kept for himself and painted in his custom color scheme for Hive-Fleet Angerboda, which is his custom Hive-Fleet. And he let me borrow a bunch of them, which I have here, and I'm gonna put some of them on the turntable and do some cool shots of them and try to explain to you why they're so cool. The problem is, if you're a Tyranid layman like myself, you might not notice the differences between some of the original Games Workshop models and Nick's work because his detail sculpting is on par with the official models. So I'm gonna do my best to break down what the differences are, and hopefully that'll help you guys appreciate them without having to have a huge knowledge of the Tyranid range to realize all the cool stuff that he's done. For example, here is a normal Tyranid warrior with a heavy venom cannon. Now here's Nick's version. As you can see, he's heavily modified the weapon to make it look more like it was bio-adapted into the model itself, rather than a bug man carrying a big gun. But check out this custom lictor. It's modified to have a more imposing silhouette and this weird side-brain detail. Nick seems to be a bit of a specialist in Carnifexes in particular. This one is modified so his arms are further forward, giving it a more aggressive look. And this one is heavily modified based on the old metal 3rd edition Carnifex, inspired by one of the pieces of art in Nick's studio. He even converted a Tyranid warrior to look like the old Screamer Killer, the smaller scything talons standing in as bone swords. Nick also showed me several other Screamer Killer based Carnifex conversions that he's begun over the years. And so when I sat down with Nick to talk about the new Leviathan box and his thoughts and what we can work on together, it quickly became clear that Nick wanted to work on customizing the Screamer Killer to make it more reminiscent of the classic design. As it turns out, the Screamer Killer has a special place in Nick's heart.
It was one of the first models that I ever saw of Tyranids, and it really felt alien and weird. And when I saw it in my buddy's model case, it just spoke to me, and it was one of my key touchstones for getting into Tyranids.
So it's clear that they're like trying to bring back this lineage with the new one. This model is not perfect, and some people have called it one of the ugliest models the Games Workshop has ever released. I'm not one of those people. I still love it, but it is like pretty squat, pretty, people have called it an egg of death or something like that.
And while we agree that the new model looks cool, Nick just couldn't help but have the urge to customize it to pay tribute to the classic Screamer Killer.
I just really wanted the opportunity to take what was there and bring in more of like the old Screamer Killer stuff that I knew and loved, and show more of that on the model.
Well, personally, I wanted to see it too. So Nick got to work. Nick started by assembling the model without glue to get a sense for the proportions and how it compares to the classic metal Screamer Killer before disassembling it and beginning his model wizardry. If you're interested in the nitty-gritty details of the techniques that Nick uses, you should definitely go check out his YouTube channel, which is called The Modern Synthesist. He has an incredible amount of tutorials that go in depth into his sculpting techniques and have tons of great information. This looks absolutely incredible. Let's go to Nick so he can break down what exactly he did.
If you look at the old Screamer Killer, the legs are set very widely apart, whereas the new one, I found that there really isn't much of a pelvis, so I had to create that from scratch essentially, and for that I used a plastic Carnifex pelvis. I wanted to reintroduce the rear hoof, the kind of heel on the feet, to make them look even bigger and stompier. Though I liked that it had the kind of big grasping claws on it, I felt like they were too long and gangly, so I wanted to shorten them a bit, but I also wanted to continue more of the scything talon we see on the tip of the claw and extend that down along the forearm. When it came to the head, I wanted to take some of that armor plating on the sides off to go back to that more bald, unarmored head. I actually cut off those bioplasma jets from the outside of the mouth in the new model and move them inside the expanded mouth that I put on it. For the head, once I'd enlarged the mouth and moved those bioplasma jets inside, I sunk the face into the rib cage, and then I extended the head back. I really want to sink it into the torso, like you see on the classic Screamer Killer. The other element I changed is I wanted to take off the spore chimneys on the back, and I also reintroduced the weird kind of a circular vent structure, like the vent structures you'd see in a Tyranid arm or a Tyranid leg. So though I do like the new classic Screamer Killer, as is in the Leviathan box, this new version of it that I made feels like a real living battering ram. And that's really what I go for when it comes to Screamer Killers.
Damn, well, I don't know about you guys, but seeing Nick build some awesome custom models has made me want to build some new models of my own for 10th edition. With new rules on the horizon, one of the smartest things that you can do is magnetize your models to future-proof them against rule changes. Just because a gun isn't good now, it doesn't mean it won't be the best gun in the future. By magnetizing all your weapon options, you'll always be ready. So if you have unbuilt models, and let's be honest, we all do, go check out the sponsor of this video, the Magnet Baron. You can find all sorts of magnets of all shapes and sizes, sorted by their uses for wargaming, and at a great price. So go check out themagnetbaron.com, because without awesome sponsors like them, we wouldn't be able to make this kind of video. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. Let me know what you guys think of Nick's work, and let me know what you think of this format as well. Nick and I have all sorts of other cool ideas cooked up for 10th. Before we get to that, I have an update on a certain 7-foot Titan coming, so stay tuned for that. Thanks again to all my Patreon supporters. You guys are the best. We'll see you next time on Eric's Hobby Workshop.